so they don't have to breathe in carcinogens, which gives them cancer. And lo and behold, the Uncharted Play organization was born and the socket soccer ball was created, okay? An extraordinarily simple but profound idea, okay? And Jessica today is at Harvard Business School. She started about a month and a half ago. She'll be one of the teams that my MSc students will be working with, and very inspirational. Now, let's talk about a really great example, right? For all of you engineers, you want to talk about designing, understanding human values. So there's a company called BioLite. And BioLite is looking at also trying to reduce indoor air pollution, okay? And you can see on the curve on the left what happens when you're burning on an open fire in the hut, what happens when you're using a more traditional rocket stove, and how BioLite is able to dramatically reduce carbon monoxide and particulate matter, okay? Significant reductions. Now, the challenge is when you burn wood, wood gives food a certain flavor. So a lot of people in these different villages, whether they be in Africa or India or in China or in Latin America, they are addicted to that flavor. And men being men, and this is a sad thing to say, but it's true, they will say, I don't care if there's indoor air pollution. I'm not cooking the food. My wife is. My food doesn't taste very good. I'm going to go back to the old way of cooking. Okay? So not only do you have to make these things appealing for the woman, but you've got to make them appealing for the man as well. I'll talk about how they figured out how to do that. But you don't get that by sitting in your cube in Silicon Valley or Boston, or by sitting in your lab here in Piscataway. Right? So how do you solve a problem of indoor air pollution with a product? Right? Can it be done physically? Do people want to use it? And can you get people to buy it at an affordable price? So can wood burn as cleanly as LPG without reliance on electricity or processed fuels? Right? So these guys came up with very, very low cost construction. Okay? $25 cost of goods, $40 retail. So it's clearly a social venture. They're selling it. Okay, they're consuming 50% less wood, so you have to chop a lot less wood, so it's productive. 95% reduction in the amount of smoke emitted into the home, and eliminates almost entirely black carbon. And very much like the soccer ball, it generates electricity. So you can light your home, you can charge your cell phone, and of course you can cook your food. Now, it uses wood. Okay, so we have a technology, but do people like it better than what they have? And this is called product management. Okay, this is where an engineer will work with a product manager and say, what does the market really want? What features, how valuable, what regions, which women? These are not simple questions to answer if you want to really do these justice. So they're using the same wood. So it was designed so you can use the same wood that they've already been using traditionally. Okay? You want to be able to prepare local cuisine. So in India, you have a lot of flatbreads. Okay? In Latin America, you have these large tortillas, as an example. But in Africa, they cook a lot of stews. So you have to have a different design, okay? And I'll go back to that in a second. But, you know, the Indian stove will not work in Africa because what they eat is very different. And so you have to take the same general platform and then think about how you actually make this useful, compelling, captivating to people of that culture. And that's why I love this project. So the entrepreneur that I got to know, a gentleman by the name of Ethan Kay, 30-year-old guy, just got his PhD from Oxford, literally submitted his dissertation about 2 weeks ago. And Ethan went and lived in these villages. Okay? He hung out in these villages with people in India, hung out in Ghana, hung out in Kenya, and he spent time with these people. And he lived with them, and he got to know who they were. So it made these products extremely relevant. Right? And his entire PhD is based on that work. Okay? It's really inspirational to me, as you can probably tell. Okay? So this is a huge market opportunity, right? 1.2 billion people, 70% in rural areas, right? 855 million people using biomass cooking, okay? 500 million people have no electricity. So they have the ability to use this, okay? And what I think is interesting is the economics, okay? you can save 50 kilograms of wood per month, so you save the family $2 a month, which in a family that only makes $2 a day is real money. You save them $4 on electricity. It's a 7-month payback for the family. They can be financed through microfinance loans, okay, because it's a small purchase price, and they get carbon credits. So this is a brilliant example of design thinking, okay, engineering thinking, being brought into the bottom of the pyramid to design products that are having a real impact on people's health and are going to be very, very useful. Okay, so let me look at a couple of other examples now. I want to talk about another thing. So for those of you who may not be ready to take the entrepreneurial leap yet, and you want to go work for a large Fortune 500 company, there's a way that you too can participate in what's happening. Okay, so I didn't put this innovation thing in backwards. I did it to highlight that we're going to talk about reverse innovation. Okay, and what reverse innovation is all about is it is a complete change in thinking. It used to be all of us arrogant, imperialistic Westerners would say, okay, now that all of our technology is obsolete, let's go dump it in Bangladesh, or let's go dump it in Botswana because we can't sell it anymore through Best Buy, okay? No one's buying it, so we'll go dump it. That was the traditional path. Technology rolled down the bottom of the pyramid, okay? We discarded our obsolete junk, and they would buy it. The message is completely different now. The message is that there's a new path. Let's start by looking at the needs at the bottom of the pyramid, very much like Ethan did with BioLite, and let us design products that are uniquely targeted to them, and then let's bring them back into the West, right? Because look at the economic crisis that we're going through. Look at what's happening in our healthcare system, for example. Look what's happening with public infrastructure. So one of the things that I think is very cool is that, and I won't even touch this one, but General Electric, obviously one of the world's great companies, and I'm sure some of you are probably interviewing with them or hoping to interview with them. General Electric was very concerned that they were hearing from a lot of medical doctors in poor rural villages in China and India that they were not able to have access to electrocardiograms to help their patients because they were insanely expensive. They were at least 10,000 USD. They were not portable. They were not reliable. They were very, very fragile. They could not be transported. So what GE said, very much like Ethan at BioLite, how do we work backwards? How much can they afford? They could probably afford a device that would be about $200. It has to be battery powered because there's no electricity out there. It's got to be very portable. The doctor's got to be able to carry it around because most of these people are not driving around in cars, okay? And it's got to be incredibly rugged and reliable because they're going over roads with potholes. So GE comes up with the following. They come up with a battery-powered, fully portable electrocardiogram machine for about $200 USD, so that any rural doctor is now able to go out into his patient base as he goes and makes house calls, and he's able to, use the EKG machine in his daily medical practice. What happened is that this device is so successful, it's so effective, that now people in the United States and Canada and the Western world are starting to buy it. So doctors in more rural areas here in the US are saying, why should I pay $10,000 for an EKG machine when I've got a perfectly good machine that I can spend $200 on and it does everything I need it to do, right? So there's a lot of opportunity for those of you who want to do social good, who also want to apply your engineering and your scientific skills, but are not yet quite ready to jump into the entrepreneurial waters to say there's another way to go do this that could be very professionally and psychologically satisfying. Okay, it's the beginning of, I think, a massive trend because of the global economy. Okay, I'm going to skip through that. So let me talk very quickly about some competition. So Dartmouth runs a competition every year. And Dartmouth ran a competition last year which was called the $300 house. Could you design a house that could withstand wind and rain and snow and have some level of insulation that would give people the dignity to be able to, live in it versus a shack or a mud hut for $300? And they came up with a design both for rural villages as well as for urban areas. Okay? Now, Stanford University has a course, and it's a design course called Design for Extreme Poverty. Okay, and that's a course I would love to teach at Rutgers at some point, but that's exactly what you get when you talk about designing for extreme poverty. You get $300 houses, you get $200 EKG machines, you get $40 stoves. Okay, so this is what's happening around the world, right? And how many of you are familiar with the X Prize? Anybody tell me what the X Prize is about? Yeah.
Or was it to go into space?
Well, it started out, I mean, you're right. So right now, the X Prize for space cargo, right? So the X Prize was created by a very successful entrepreneur, Peter Diamandis, who started offering large cash prizes to incentivize people to solve major social issues. So this is something that has gotten a tremendous amount of momentum. And I'll just show you a couple of things that have happened here, right? So they started doing things where you can actually, have private spacecraft. So Richard Branson, who is very well known from Virgin Atlantic and the Virgin brands, is a person that's been behind the winning team, Spaceship One. That's Peter Diamandis, the founder of the X Prize. But because of the success they had with the space and the cargo piece, they're now doing X Prize competitions in education, in energy, in space exploration, in the life sciences. And this is basically an open source competition where you bring together a team of colleagues and you submit your entry. Okay? It's a pretty extraordinary opportunity to practice your skills. Okay, so let's talk about some changes, okay? Changes in the way these things get financed, okay? So the bottom line is there was this cliche for a very long time. If you dream it, you can do it. But there was always a caveat. If you could get the money to do it. Okay, and that's always been a challenge. So where do you get the money? Okay, now the good news is there's a completely new approach, that there are a lot of investors that have emerged that have the same idealism as you folks do. Okay, and they're not about just, I'm here to make a lot of money, I don't really care what you do, just make me a return. So this guy, Jed Emerson, has pioneered this blended impact, this double or triple bottom line metric. And so a lot of investors have emerged, including the Acumen Fund and Endeavor, that are following these principles. Okay? Now, crowdfunding is something that is also quite interesting. Has anybody ever used a crowdfunding site to raise money for a project? Do you guys know what crowdfunding is? Yeah, please tell me.
Global giving.
Global giving? And what was it for your own project?
Yes, yes.
What was your experience with it?
I mean, it's great. They
Yeah.
give you 1 month as a way to raise $5,000, and if you were able to do that within the month, they believe that you have enough back end to be part of their organization, and their organization has tons of philanthropists.
It's great.
Philanthropists.
Okay, cool. It's great.
Use CrowdRise.
You use for CrowdRise as well? Great. You had your hand up as well?
Yeah, it wasn't a specific site, but a site similar to this.
Yeah.
We tried to use it to start a new yearbook at the School of
Yeah,
Engineering.
yeah.
We tried to fundraise for it.
Okay. And was it Kickstarter?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I'll put a couple more up on the next page. But these are a little bit more socially focused, right? CrowdRise and Start Some Good. But there are a lot of other ones that are more general. So you've got Kickstarter, which is the biggest of the bunch right now. They'll process about 150 million USD this year. So they're becoming a real force in terms of finance. If you're into the, so my RUTV friends in the back of the room, the people that are actually filming us tonight, right? If you've got aspirations to create independent films, Indiegogo is where you go crowdsource or crowdfund for independent films. And if you're an aspiring artist, like children's books or stuff like that, you would go to something like ArtSpire to fund your, what you're working on. Okay? So this is something that didn't even exist 2 years ago. American law has changed. There is such a recognition that we need to fuel entrepreneurial energy in this country that laws that have been on the books since the 1930s have been completely overturned so that we will allow all of us to become citizen activists and citizen investors. So you can now fund projects that inspire you. That was illegal until last February, okay? So this is all new stuff. And to me, it is the rocket fuel that will drive this entrepreneurial renaissance that I talked about earlier, okay? So these are some of the leading investors in this field, people that are more professional investors that you would go to. Jackie Novogratz, there's a great TED Talk that she does online if you're interested, or from the Acumen Fund.